Welcome to day 15 API handling. Modern data pipelines just don't read files. We may also have situation where we have to interact with an API for data ingestion, for configuration ingestion, for doing some sort of a things in ETL pipelines. Earlier ETL pipeline used to be quite boring. Only like take the data, run some SQL and all. But nowadays, since data engineering is advancing, the data engineer has to deal day in day out with APIs. I'm just giving few examples of API calls with Python here in this video. What is an API? First, let's understand that. An API is an application programming interface and is how two systems talk to each other. It's a decided way. It's a decided language between the two system, and it's like saying, "Give me your data in JSON, I'll process it," like that. Commonly, there are two methods that we use when we are dealing in data engineering. There are two HTTP methods that we deal with API, and those are GET. The GET is where we fetch the data, we pull the data, and POST is where we send the data for some upload. I have used the freely available APIs for showing the examples. So to begin with, we just first have to set up an import for request. This is a library available for API interactions. So we simply do import request. Let's run this. We are going to use this library. Let's start with the GET API. This is a common API available for free. Otherwise, APIs are quite protected entities. They need some token authentication to pass through, and then only they give you data or post the data. This is how we are using. We have already imported request, and now we are going to call this URL. URL is unique resource locator, which gives you the right location of that API. API is nothing but a function, we can say. This is a unique resource locator, and then the moment you pass this to a get function of request library, you will get certain response. What we are checking here in the response is the status code. Status code plays very important role. Status code tells you the state of a response. If the status code is 200, means the response is successful. And then if the response is successful, it means data is received. So response.json 0 will give you the first record. Like that, if you take the function like response.json, it would have this set of items that are returned as a part of the API request call. Moving to next item, parsing and loading this data received into pandas. Because the moment we receive the data, and if we are able to successfully convert to pandas, the entire pandas library would be useful. So for that, let's start with the import pandas as PD. Let's use the response object and the property of JSON to load all the users, and let's pass those users dictionary into data frame function of pandas. The moment we pass, a data frame is created, a df user is created, and you can simply print the df users. We can even simply do like this, like print df. Let's see what we get. Let me first run this. If it is not run, now let us print this out. Okay, I forget to run the cell above, therefore. So now you are able to see that users response is there. I received around like 10 records. Maybe it is printing just first 10 records, and then uh, now since it's a Python data frame, since it's a pandas data frame, we have all sort of things that we learned in the last video. We can do anything to that. Like we can get here, so it will print just the first five rows of that data frame. We can flatten the JSON as well, because we see that one of the column company address, specifically address, is in the form of a JSON. Can we flatten that? Yes, we can flatten that so that we can get the granular details. We can use a function, we can use lambda to flatten the JSON. So for example, if you want to derive the city from that address, we can just simply address that column and then apply the lambda function on top of it to explicitly separate the city, and we would get the data frame, we would get the city column added to the data frame. Now if you run this, you would be able to see that a city column is explicitly added, where earlier the city was part of an address, correct? Earlier city was part of address, now it is explicitly separated out and available as a separate column, to which then we can apply certain conditions. So this is how we deal with pandas. We just called the API, got the data in the form of JSON, passed that JSON to the pandas, and the moment we were in pandas, we were like very happy because after that, innumerable number of functions and API functions were available as a part of pandas framework, and you can very easily manipulate that. Similarly, you can flatten the JSON if you receive by chance a JSON column. On the similar lines, let's call another API called weather API, right? This weather API again is a freely available API. What we simply do is we get the URL and then pass certain parameters to it. The moment we pass certain parameters, we get the weather of that particular area. That particular area's weather is received as a response. We can, so this is just to show that we can pass parameters to an API as well. Parameters are passed in the form of JSON, like that. Okay, so this is a current weather situation of that particular latitude and longitude, like that. We can specifically convert that in the form of a data frame, and then data frame, as you guys know, we can manipulate that further. Let's try and understand something called post API, post request, where we are in get in the get we are at the receiving end, we receive the data, whereas in post we post the data, we send the data. Post is used to send the data to an API. For example, creating a new record. Let's say we are wanted to send a new record back into the system, then post is being used. URL is there. Definitely, again, I am trying to use one of the freely available post API. So this is a payload that we are passing title, body, and user ID, and then we'll try to receive it back and listen into that. So let's run it. The moment we run, we get the response as to 1, which says that okay, the post is successful and this particular data set is now being inserted. So get, most of the time we use get, and some of the time it may be a situation that you may have to post. Some of the logging APIs are there, some other APIs where you just wanted to post the final result. So these, in such cases, these kind of things are useful, and we use request library for that. Request and response are the way to deal with APIs. Whenever we are dealing with APIs, we must definitely know how to handle an error, because this error, there are different type of error comes in an API, and it's very difficult to debug in the production system, and therefore exceptional handling is very important. So we have a elaborate exceptional handling present, where you can say that you have called the API based on the type of exception, whether it's a timeout exception or some specific HTTP error or a generic exception. We can put it in a try catch block and try to handle the error. Let's see one real world mini project where you are able to ingest data from API, convert it to pandas, and then write it as a CSV. What we simply doing is we are going to use a URL and a request library get function to get some of the comments. This we will receive it as a comments. We'll receive comments in the response. The moment comments are received in the response, we will collect that JSON and store it in the variable called data. That data will pass it to data frame and will convert it to pandas. The moment we convert it to pandas, we have capability that we can select the specific columns in that, like post ID, name, email, body, like that we can collect. Once that is done, we can load that into a CSV, into our volume. So let's run this. So this is a kind of a complete life cycle of pulling the data, then doing some transformation, and then again saving it to a CSV file. A ETL kind of an operation that we have performed. This is a very simplistic form. In real world, it will be very complex operation that we'll be performing in between. So this is all about API handling with Python. This is a short summary of how to use the request and response, and then also using how to handle the get and post APIs for that matter. Thank you for listening into this. Um, we in the next video, I think, let me just check. In the next video, we will also cover something called JSON handling. How explicitly handle the how explicitly we can handle the JSON, data cleaning, and all such videos are remaining. So for getting the latest update, please do subscribe. Thanks.